why we do this podcast, because it will help two kinds of people. People that are in transition, right? Executives that may be looking into going into a completely different area. And I love that young professionals can look at this, understand how you got to where you are in your career. What are some of the things that make you such an incredible networker, right? I want to really ask you questions about your superpower there. And selfishly, to spend more time with you. I admire you to get to know you better through a series of structured questions. Okay?
It's a great honor for me to have this opportunity with you, and it's a great honor for me to get to know you better. So it's a two-way street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. So let's just get one thing out of the way. Do I have permission to record this?
Yes.
Ralph, tell me your full name and the name that you like to be called.
Ralph Hasson is my full name, and Ralph, you can call me Ralph.
Okay. Ralph, tell me a little bit about your upbringings. Where did you grow up? And tell me the kind of kid that you were.
Well, my dad was in the military, so I grew up in the military life, and we moved a lot when I was a kid, which for a kid was a great opportunity. My parents taught us to treat it as an opportunity. We got to live in a lot of places. It has a downside. You don't have friends throughout your life that you know them since your childhood, but you have a lot of friends in a lot of places. So we were taught to treat it as an opportunity. I think I had a wonderful childhood because my parents were good parents and we lived a lot of places and I saw a lot of things and they,
There is a song that says, I got friends in all the places, but where, like, tell me about some of the places, like international, in the States.
we did. We lived on Okinawa for 4 years and that was a formative experience for me. It was a wonderful experience for a kid. It's the kind of experience I wish everybody could have. It was a real learning experience for me and a great opportunity. I was born in Texas. We lived in Texas, New Mexico, Florida, Massachusetts, California, Okinawa, Louisiana. We lived in Texas several times. So
Uh-huh. And you are now in Austin, Texas, right?
I am now in Austin, Texas.
What's your favorite thing to do on Saturday mornings before everybody wakes up?
I'm at Whole Foods on Saturday mornings before everybody wakes up because I don't want to be there with the crowds, man. So
That's
Saturday
where I
mornings,
see.
my wife is at the farmer's market because that's the way we live. We try to eat local, organic, sustainable produce and food. And I'm at Whole Foods. And that's
You
how we
want to
live.
find Ralph? Go to Whole Foods Saturday before the crowds, and he'll be there in the produce section.
I'll be there. It's not a good time to chat though. I'm not there to chit chat. I'm there to shop, man.
Yeah. No, you are on a mission. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about your education. You went to UT and you also spent some time at Harvard.
Yes. So I went to UT for undergrad and for law school. I left. I lived in the Bay Area. The first third of my career was spent mostly as a professional mediator. And when I left that work, I went back, I wanted to sharpen those skills, and I didn't want to be anywhere near the law. So I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard, and I was able, because of the program I was in, which was a 1-year program, to study with a lot of leading figures in the world of negotiation and mediation and so on. And that was a 1-year program, and I did that. I moved back to the Bay Area, and then I came back to Austin to help start a company here in 1990.
Wow. Ralph, was the mediation job like your first job ever that you got paid for?
My first real job. Yeah. So I got a job with the consumer division of the DA's office in Marin County, California. And I was hired to help with consumer litigation, which is civil. It's not criminal for the most part. And they had these jobs mediating consumer disputes. And they were a lot lower paid and they were lower status, but it looked a lot more fun. And I said, let me do that. And they let me do that. And at night, I was a mediator and arbitrator in 2 cities doing rent control mediations and arbitration, which was fascinating work and could be quite complex. I ended up running that mediation division and restructuring it in light of budget cuts. And then I left and went to the Kennedy School. Yeah.
So you've lived in so many different places, UT, Harvard. Be kind to the phone. It's okay. You get
No, I got rid of it.
somebody's wanting to reach out, Ralph. It's okay.
Yeah,
Make
no,
sure
I'm
it's
done. I don't know
urgent.
who it was. I'm not answering it.
Okay, okay. Well, so so many different cities, places. What's it about Austin that you love so much?
You know, when I got to Austin to go to school, I loved it. Like so many people. I will say I felt at home. And when I left Austin, I lived on both coasts and I had many friends. I enjoyed those experiences, especially in the Bay Area, but I never felt at home.
Mm.
And I kept telling everybody how great Austin was. And I think I finally figured out maybe I ought to just move back. And I met my wife. We got engaged and she was from Texas. And Austin was the only place I'd come to. We both wanted to come back to Texas, and here we are.
So talk,
I love the culture and I love the city's essential spirit.
yeah, culture and the city's essential spirit. Talk about that and how that. I mean, the city has changed. I mean,
It has
maybe you can
changed.
describe or tell me, maybe back in the 90s, what? How would you describe Austin before and now?
Oh my gosh, it's changed so much. I guess the best example I could give you is that when we moved back in 1990, we won't even go to when I was in school here because that was a very long time ago. But when we moved back in 1990, anytime you went out, you would run into somebody you knew. If you were in a restaurant, you'd see somebody you knew, and people really knew each other across the community. And now it's a big city. Now I walk down Second Street and I'm in the shadow of buildings. That was not the case in 1990 when we moved back. So it's a big city now. But I think the essential spirit is still the same. People are still helpful and welcoming. There's an amazing community of entrepreneurs and people who want to build things and create things. And that part hasn't changed. And I think the spirit of the city that wants to move forward in every way still exists.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about Whole Foods that you and I love, right? And but you were there at the very beginning, right? 1980. I mean, did you see that first store being open, and were you there during the flood and all of that?
I had just moved to the West Coast, but I came back regularly. And yes, I saw that store at 12th Street. Yes, I knew that store and I was familiar with every iteration of it, every location that, that, that the store had initially. So yeah, I knew it then. When I really started shopping there was after we moved back in 1990 because we were gone for most of the 80s.
Yeah. What's it about Whole Foods that you love so much?
Well, first of all, the core values. So those core values that Whole Foods has held just resonate with me in a tremendous way. And I believe in them. They make sense. The whole concept of conscious capitalism is a concept that makes sense and has value to me. And I love the commitment. I know that when I go to the seafood counter or I buy produce, I'm going to have the opportunity to buy highest quality, organic, sustainable sorts of things. And that matters to me.
Yeah. There is something about you, Ralph, that I told you before, that it's a peaceful energy. You're very kind and you're consistently kind with everybody that you meet, right? I find that leaders at Whole Foods also have that same energy, kindness, and it's contagious, right? You want to be
Yes.
around people like that. It
Yes.
provides sort of like a safe space. I mean, a lot of the leaders there. Do you agree that that's sort of like in their DNA?
Absolutely. You know, Andres, our mutual friend Walter Robb, the former co-CEO, I've walked through the store with Walter and watched him high five everybody he sees, know them by name, have a conversation with them, not just, hi, I got to move on, a conversation. And, that's the kind of relationship building with your team, not your employees, your team, that the leaders engage in that fits with those core values. So absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Walter because this is being recorded and we love Walter so much. And again, seeing a leader display those attributes in front of the team,
Yeah.
it's just so inspiring, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen Walter do it time and time again in multiple settings, and it's an inspiration.
Ralph, I love going to Barton Springs here. It's a place that brings me joy. What's that
Yeah.
place for you here in Austin?
You know, it's funny. I love Barton Springs. I haven't been in a long time, but it's a beautiful place. Boggy Creek Farm. So
Okay.
Boggy Creek Farm, founded by true entrepreneurs in in having sustainable organic farms inside a city, honored by the International Slow Food Movement. John Mackey's a good friend with Carol Ann Sale and Larry Butler, the founders. So my wife discovered it and started shopping there when we moved back. And at some point, it became my job. So I would be there before I went to Whole Foods, Andres,
Okay.
every Saturday morning, very early. And it's a beautiful farm in the middle of Austin. And it's standing outside the farm stand where they sell the produce at 7:30 in the morning. And maybe the sun's just coming up and you can hear the chickens. And it's just a beautiful moment, a beautiful space. The wind moves through the trees. It's a historic place.
Okay. Ralph, let's talk a little bit about your experience selecting boards, being a board member for those executives that are thinking about joining a board, right? How should someone earn a seat in a board? Like, what are those main attributes that someone needs to have to be qualified?
Let's talk for 30 seconds about how boards recruit members first, because that is going to help
Okay.
people think about it. So how do boards recruit members? The old way, you look for celebrities, you look for stars, you look for people in your industry out a big name. Boards don't do that anymore. Well-run boards don't do that. Well-run boards have a matrix. They look at the company's strategy and they say, in light of our strategy, what are the skills and areas of experience we have on our board now and what do we need? And they
Okay.
recruit to that matrix. So people who want to be successful looking for boards are going to identify the sectors in which they can add value and maybe even some sample companies in those sectors. And then they're going to go out and build relationships. One might say networking, but I prefer to say build relationships because it's got to be a two-way street. You're not just out there to get a board spot. You're out there to build relationships with folks. But if you go out, you build relationships with people and explore opportunities for the board service with them, and you identify the sectors where you can add value, and then you can help get yourself in front of boards where you have a strong value proposition. And it's got to be very strong because it's a highly competitive environment.
Yeah. What is the usual time commitment for someone that's on a board?
It's so different now. Boards have so many responsibilities. So you're going to serve on a committee and you're going to do committee work between board meetings. Typically, there are 4 board meetings a year. On some types of boards, even more. And you're going to have committee meetings between those meetings and you got to do homework. There's stuff to read. There's a lot to read. There's a lot to absorb. If you're on a really well-run board, you're going to be out doing site visits. You're going to be meeting the people who work in the company as well as the management team. So, it varies a lot depending on whether you're private or public and the nature of the company, the size of the company. But let's just say it's a significant time commitment. It's not something that you just show up for 4 times a year.
Yeah. And most board opportunities are paid, right? And or
Yes.
there are some boards that are volunteer, and some boards you're required to fundraise to be a member of the board. Can you talk a little bit about what you know in terms of compensation for boards?
Well, yeah, board compensation, again, it varies depending on the size of the board, whether it's public or private, and, how many committees you're on and on. Typically, you get some amount as a retainer, and then you get maybe some amount per meeting and maybe some amount per committee. That continues to evolve as to what the pay structure is. And it's, people who think they're going to make a fortune doing board work, that doesn't happen all that often. If you're on large public company boards, then you might do that. But short of that, the compensation may not be that high. Nonprofit boards are non-compensated, of course, and you have to raise money for them, just as you're suggesting. You either have to give or get, is the expression.
Yeah. Why should I join a board? Like, why would I get, let's say, a nonprofit board that's a good, what would I get in return? Like, what kind of skills, capabilities, experiences does that build in a leader that will make my time worth joining?
Well, that's a very interesting question because I would say you shouldn't unless you really know you want to do it. And what I mean by that is it's a significant commitment. It's a serious commitment and you have very serious fiduciary duties. And if the board doesn't do its job, you could be personally liable. So don't do it unless you really know that it's right for you. If you do it, what are you going to get in return? Well, first of all, I love board service. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I find it immensely rewarding. In the right board, you're working in a collegial environment with people from whom you're going to learn and where you have the opportunity to add value. That's a wonderful thing. And you'll be compensated for it. And you'll have this rich and rewarding experience that makes you better in anything else you do. If you're an executive, if you're serving on another board, whatever it is, the interaction with the colleagues and the management team and meeting the employees, the team members is going to make you a better person and a better professional, in my
I
opinion.
believe that. Yeah. I'm on a board right now of a company that I love, and I love the team. And what you said, learning from the team, their ways of working, seeing the improvements, but also their clients, right? They work with nonprofits, philanthropy companies, and just being exposed to that, it's been such a gratifying experience. All right, Ralph. So Carby Lane, that's a beloved restaurant here in Austin.
Yes.
I don't know much about it. Tell me a little bit about the restaurant. Why is it so special? Your time in the board there, and why does a restaurant need a board?
Well, let's note a very interesting thing about Kirby Lane. Kirby Lane was like Whole Foods ahead of its time. The founding generation, David Ayer and Patricia Ayer, had the concept that they wanted sustainable local produce for their restaurant. And they went out and got it. And that was, 1980. They were way ahead of their time. So they had that concept early on, and they have core values that would resonate with anybody at Whole Foods, a very strong set of core values. 3 C's: care for our guests, care for the food, care for each other. And they live it. There are stories about early team members who suffered through some terrible times and how the leadership supported them, that sort of thing. So great culture, family-owned company, second generation now running it. And all of the interested, involved family members wanted an independent board. They didn't necessarily agree about everything, but they knew they wanted an independent board. They wanted an independent voice to provide oversight to the board. And that's what the board did. The responsibility of the board is to protect the best interests of the corporation. That's what the board does. And that's what we did. That was our role.
Talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of a board meeting, and as a board member, you have to learn a little bit about how to vote, how to run a good board meeting.
Well, typically that begins far in advance of the board meeting, and boards should certainly have this process in place. There'll be an agenda I was the lead independent director, which meant the CEO was the chairman. But if the CEO and chairman roles are combined, very often the best practice is to have a lead independent director who's an independent director who represents the interests of the independent directors to the rest of the board. That was my role. So the lead independent director, if the chair and CEO role aren't combined, it'll be the chair and the CEO will put together an agenda for the board meeting. The CEO starts that process, of course. They do back and forth. Materials go out to the board in advance. Everybody has to go through those materials. That's part of the job. And then you follow that agenda in the meeting. There's typically an executive session, which means the independent directors alone meet, at least at the end, in many cases before and after the board meeting. And the purpose of that is to help the board manage itself. And then during the board meeting, you will cover the various topics. And typically, there's a board agenda that is tied to the annual board calendar. So what quarter do we report our financial results? What quarter do we review X, Y, and Z? And then each committee will report on its work in relation to that calendar, in relation to what the company's working on at the moment. Strategy should always be on the agenda, every board meeting.
Yeah. And what's the key of running a great board meeting? Like a couple of things that you think about, because if I'm only there for 4 times a year, I imagine that time has to be run very efficiently, right?
Yes. So one of the key pieces of advice in this day and age from NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors, and many others is less time looking back. So you spend less time on what happened last quarter and more time looking forward. Where are we going? Where are we headed? Because things are changing so fast now. The company has so much more to address. The board has so many more things to oversee. You want to spend more time looking ahead more time drilling down on what are we doing in relation to strategy? What are we doing in relation to technology? All these areas the board has to oversee. You want to spend more time looking ahead and less time looking back. And you want to minimize the use of historical reporting and maximize interaction between board and management to move the strategy forward.
And I'm sure like there's got to be a leader, a timekeeper, someone that holds the room accountable, right?
Yes, well, that will often be the CEO leads the board meeting, but if the CEO goes on a little, it's the responsibility of the lead director or somebody to say, how are we doing in terms of the agenda? And gently move the thing forward. But somebody has to have that responsibility, and usually that'd be the lead independent director or chairman.
Yeah. I can see you doing that very well and very
Done it.
influential. Yeah.
Yes.
How was that? How are we doing in terms of the agenda? Okay. Good, good, good. Ralph, so how do I know if I'm a good board member? What are the metrics and how do you rate board members year to year?
Well, there well-run boards have a board assessment process. You evaluate the performance of the full board, you evaluate the performance of each committee, and you do peer assessments of individual directors. Maybe you do a third of the board every year so that over a 3-year period, each director gets individually evaluated. What are you looking for in those individual evaluations, which is a lot about how do you know if you're a good board member? Are you prepared? I mean, some of this will sound incredibly basic, but do you show up on time? Do you engage constructively? In other words, you can't be afraid to challenge anything you hear, but you have to do it constructively. In fact, it's your role to do that. You have to be collegial. You have to work well together with your colleagues. Even in the event of a disagreement over some particular decision, the goal ought to be to move the board forward, to move the company forward in a positive direction. So, do you fulfill your responsibilities as a committee member? Committee work is serious stuff. A lot of the work of the board happens between meetings. Do you do that work? So the board evaluation of a peer will not be all that lengthy, but is the person prepared? Does the person engage constructively? Does the person raise new ideas and challenge things that he or she hears and so on?
How does someone in Austin get connected to opportunities that would bring perhaps some board opportunities?
So much of it, again, the word we use is networking, but I prefer relationship building because I said it's got to be a two-way street. You've got to be
Say that again, Rob. I love that. I love that.
asking the person.
Networking is different than relationship building.
Yes. Yes. So
Tell me
that's how
more.
you're going to do it.
Let's
But
talk about that.
when you meet with someone, it's got to be a two-way street. You've got to be interested in them and trying to help them and not just have your hand out asking for a board spot. And typically you wouldn't do that anyway. You would talk about what you're interested in. You're very interested in board service. You would be able to identify the sectors where you think you could add value. You might even have some sample companies in mind, and you'd share that kind of information with somebody. And they might say to you, well, I don't know anybody at that company, but you didn't even mention this other company, and they might be a good fit for you. So it's through networking with a clear understanding of where you might add value. And then going out and meeting people. So you go to events, the National Association of Corporate Directors, Private Directors Association. These are good groups to join to meet fellow directors. But then the sectors where you have a value proposition. So if you're involved in technology, go to the meetings of the Central Texas Angel Network or get involved with the technology associations here in town. Go to meetings of any business groups you're involved with, whatever that area is, and meet those people and let them know find out what they're up to and help them in any way you can and let them know what you're interested in.
Yeah. But let's talk more about relationship building versus networking in a little bit. And thank you for the invite to the event. I got it yesterday. I'll be there.
Great.
Okay, Ralph, let's kind of pivot a little bit on some fun questions. What is one thing that you love that you purchased that was under $100?
Well, it was probably a jazz CD of some kind because I love jazz. So I buy a lot of CDs that are hard to find. So it might have been that. It
Okay.
might have been a really great bottle of wine that only cost $25. Might have been one of those things.
Yeah. What? Tell me about the great bottle of wine. I'm curious. Like, do you? I mean, enjoying wine it's very interesting, but sometimes the cheaper bottles are the best bottles, right? If you know what you're doing.
Yeah. You can shop for value. And yeah, the sad news and the good news is you just have to try it. It's the only way to find out. But if you shop for value, you can find
Yeah.
very nice things.
Ralph, so what do you do to stay sharp, balance, hobbies, interest?
Well, I think you know this, Andres. My number one thing probably is working out. I'm in the gym a lot. And for me, that's as much about mental health as it is about physical well being. But I think it's critical. And it's just critical to keeping your edge for directors and for any person out in the world these days, continuous learning. That's now becoming a mandate for boards of directors. For me personally, I'm consulting with an AI firm on corporate governance products, and I'm constantly trying to learn things that I don't know. And I know a lot less than there's so much that I don't know. It's amazing. So I'm constantly trying to learn and study in that area. And in any area that a board oversees, you've got to be engaged in continuous learning. So I think that's very important to maintaining an edge. And I think staying in contact with the communities with which you're engaged is very important. Hearing what people are doing, what they're working on, what's new, what's different and interesting. So those are all things I think are important.
Yeah. Would you say you are more of an introvert or an extrovert?
You know, it's funny, Andres, when I was chair of NACD here in Austin and we had an event, I would go to every table and I would shake every person's hand. And one time a guy said to me, I like to come to the events just to watch you work the room. And I said to this guy whose name is Steve, I said, Steve, I can do this because it's my job, but I'd rather be home listening to jazz and drinking a glass of wine. So I think that's my personal inclination, but I can do the extrovert thing when I have to.
Well, let's dig deeper into the work that you're doing now. Obviously, you're bringing AI, you're training directors. What what have you learned? What have you discovered in terms of things that have worked and things that have not worked?
First of all, I say directors are absolutely hungry for information about AI. They know they have to learn this. Technology in general is a huge topic for boards. The 2024 Blue Ribbon Commission report by NACD was all about board oversight of technology because it's not just AI, it's robotics and quantum computing and all these areas that are exploding. But with respect to AI, I think what we've learned is that having boards engage in continuous learning to having boards assess the proficiency of directors as it stands now, providing training to enhance proficiency, creating a structure that supports continuous learning, and making it an expectation for every directors. So, in fact, now you include that in the board evaluation. Is this director engaged in continuous learning? That's something you're going to look at. With AI, you want to make sure that everybody has a basic understanding. Boards have the responsibility to enhance the work of management and not impede it, as the NACD said in the 2024 report. That means you got to have the basic knowledge to be able to ask the right questions about what management is doing in terms of AI strategy, AI governance, and return on investment. So you've got to go out and get that knowledge. It's your responsibility, and you have to get the training. And I think the other thing I've seen really clearly is that boards, Stephen Strauss, the CEO of Kung Fu AI, where I've been helping out a little bit, likes to say that boards need to stop worrying about showing off what they're doing or not doing and focus on solving real business problems, high leverage problems, where there'll be a big gain. Focus on those and solve those first. And companies right now are all over the map. A lot of companies have done something, and their employees are certainly using AI, whether they know it or not, whether they permit it or not. But now, how can we identify high leverage problems that we're going to work on and solve? How can we enhance our talent pool and our training and clean up our data, and do all the basic things that support the AI initiatives.
Yeah.
Those are things that boards have
Do
to work on.
you believe we're close to getting to artificial general intelligence? And is AI going to ever replace things like love and consciousness and critical thinking and feeling? What's your take on that?
Boy, I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough to answer that question. I'll put it this way. I would never let AI write for me. I would let AI do research for me, but I'd never let it write for me. I do my own writing. And I would urge people to be very careful. AI makes mistakes. We all know that. It's not always reliable. So I think what I'm focused on now, there's a great book by Marco Ianciti and Kareem Lakhani called Competing in the Age of AI, which is not about what AI is or how you use it. It's about how it's literally going to transform the economy and change the fundamental operating structure of companies. And that's the piece I'm focused on now more than consciousness, because those things are coming for sure. I don't know about consciousness and all that, where we're headed for that. I sure hope we'll keep guardrails in place. That's what AI governance is all about.
Yeah.
But it is going to change the structure of the economy and the way companies operate at a fundamental level.
Yeah. Ralph, so tell me more about, you seem to be very happy, joyful, fulfilled. What advice do you give someone that's just like starting like to look for a job, maybe just graduated from college, not about careers, but about staying happy, fulfilled, and wanting to build those genuine relationships, right?
I think you give me more credit than I deserve, Andres. I'm not sure I'm not fulfilled yet. I've got more things I want to do. But what I would say is the thing that I didn't do, because I think in part of how I was raised and what the expectations that were placed in front of me, that I would encourage everybody to do is find the thing you love the most and go do that. Go do that. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. Just find that thing. Now, you can't just jump into something you don't know anything about. You got to learn about it. You got to educate it and meet people who work in that area. But go do the thing that you're most interested in, that you most love. Do that. So that's one thing. I think a key thing for me is a sense of purpose and finding something that makes you feel like you're making the world a better place is critical to having some joy in your life. There's a great book. I sent you a link to this book, I believe, called Incorruptible by a guy named Eric Ries, who also wrote The Lean Startup. And one of the really big ideas in that book is that every company ought to have as a part of its mission some way of enhancing human flourishing. Now, that's a big idea, and that's a beautiful idea. But if you find yourself in a space where you're doing something that makes the world a better place and enhances human flourishing, I think you're going to be probably feeling pretty good about yourself.
Yeah. What advice do you give me, Ralph, to like find that purpose and find ways to, find happiness, love what we have instead of wanting more?
You're asking some big questions, Andres. I think, boy, I think you've got to identify your own core values and pursue those, and you, Andres, you're a role model. I'm not offering you any advice. I'm listening to you. So for me, no, it's a matter of finding purpose and feeling like I'm doing things that are going to make the world a better place. That's
Yeah.
what
Thank you, Ralph. I do feel so energized when I run into you when we have coffee, and it's those conversations are, not superficial, and the depth of the conversations makes you think and makes you, you know, process things in a way that's different than looking at social media or chatting with someone on text. So, Ralph, as you look into what's coming next, like what's next for you?
well, board work, I hope. I continue to work with Kung Fu AI for as long as that opportunity exists. I'm very involved with the National Association of Corporate Directors and continue to do that. Those are things on the professional front that are most consuming me at the moment.
Okay. Tell me about food. So, You shop at Whole Foods. You're a foodie, right?
Yeah, my wife doesn't like that term, so I don't use it, but I suppose that's accurate. I know my wife is a fabulous cook, and we we eat incredibly well. I do a lot of dishes, Andres, but we eat incredibly well. So,
But no,
y-
but the role that food has to nurture your body and to keep you sharp, there is something about like eating really well and having energy and not having diseases, right?
yes, and it's not about having huge portions. It's about the quality of what you're putting into your body. That matters. What you're putting into your body, fruits and vegetables and things that are good for you and that are grown organically and sustainably, and preparing them in a way that draws out those ingredients, which also will be very
Yeah.
tasty. Yeah.
Why doesn't she like the term foodie?
Really sure. I never really
She
grilled her
doesn't.
on that, Andres.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get you in trouble, but try to find out from me because I'm curious. Okay.
I will ask her. I will. I
Okay.
will.
I'll expect
Because
the
she is one, but just don't call her that.
but maybe there's another term that we should be using.
Yeah.
Ralph, what brings complete fulfillment to you?
Oh my gosh. Think it could be any of several things. Eating a challenge in a workout, hearing something new I haven't heard before when I'm listening to music. When somebody pays you a compliment about the work you do and you feel like I did all right on that. Somebody appreciated something I did. That's huge. Anytime I'll tell you, Andres, a lot of times when I feel stuck, when I'm not getting anything done and I just need a way to get unstuck. I found that if I do something for somebody else, I'll always have those things on my list where I'm doing something for somebody else. I'll just stop what I'm doing and go do something for somebody else. And that really brings me joy.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. That's so important. Do something for somebody else. As a byproduct, you'll get joy. I'm gonna show you a picture. I just thought about something for the next question. You're gonna tell the audience who this is. You and I know
Okay.
this person really well. Okay,
All
hold on.
right.
I have it right here by my desk.
That's Doug Allens. That's our orthopedic surgeon that you and I share.
We shout out to Dr. Ellens. We've seen him a few times. But my question is related to adversity, right? When you and I
Yes.
had a few injuries, you have to go into the operating room. That's not fun. But think about, I mean, for me, these injuries have been mentally really tough, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
consider those tough moments. But can you think about a monster moment that was really difficult for you in throughout your life, and how did you overcome that?
Any number. You know, you asked me about this in a different way before this podcast. And I think in relation to these injuries, I would say that, I was just in physical therapy this morning for something that didn't merit surgery, but I needed physical therapy. And the thing I've learned from physical therapy is the value of persistence and hard work. You just got to put the work in. And through that, that's that's how you can overcome. An old Marine I knew used to say to me, you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's just so important. I think of moments when I left a company that I had helped build from scratch, and because there wasn't any room to grow, it was a very sad moment. And the way I had to overcome it was to find a new direction. So
Mhm.
that's what you have to do. You have to stop for a minute, reflect, and think about, what do I do?
I love that, Ralph. The analogy between physical therapy and overcoming
Yes.
a tough moment in your career, because if you go and you put one foot on top of the other and you put hard work, you will recover. I mean, you and I are now perfect, right? And it was because you were so hard at work with your physical therapy.
Yeah. This morning we talked about the fact the physical therapist and I, Sam Collick, whom I love, is just amazing, about the fact that if you're, and this goes to your work life as well. If you're active, you're going to have certain kinds of problems, but then you overcome. You do the things you need to do to treat yourself and overcome that. If you're inactive, you're going to have a whole nother set of problems that are much worse. And it's
Yeah,
the
choose
same
your
if
heart,
you're
right?
career. You've got to persevere and keep moving forward. If it's not going well, you got to find a new direction.
Yeah. I call this process, or I read it on Ikigai, right? The process of recovering and becoming stronger as a
Yeah.
result of the injury or the setback.
Yeah.
Colombia just had a big earthquake, if you saw in the news. And these natural
Yes.
disasters sometimes are examples of how some of those things will happen, but communities will get through that. And in some cases, you can become stronger as a result of that. Your bones actually, this left side of my body with, I have plates, I
Yeah.
have a few, you know, things here and there. It's stronger and the bones grow stronger, right? So it's the ability to be anti-fragile and not just to be resilient or to
Yes.
overcome something, you know?
Right. Resilient is a very good word to use, I think.
Yeah. Ralph, we need to wrap up here. I could talk to you for forever. It's just it's not every day that you get the chance to have someone like you share knowledge. Tell me about like happiness. What's happiness to you? What's how do you define happiness?
Andres, I think it's having a sense of purpose. It's, I think, savoring the moments in your personal life with your friends and your important relationships that have meaning for you. I think it's kind word from somebody that when you've been working on something and you've achieved something that brought value to somebody else. Those things bring me happiness.
No, I love that. And you talk about purpose a lot. What's your purpose?
You know, I think the way I put it is pretty straightforward and simple, and I don't have any flourishes. It's just I'd like to leave the world a better place than I found it through anything I'm working on.
Yeah. Makes me remember of my friend Mike Thompson that wrote a book called Finding Good. It's one of
Yeah.
his pillars. You and I consider myself somewhat okay at remembering names, and when you said something and maybe I can think about a friend, and like, how do you do that? Like, how do you stay sharp, or what hacks do you have to remember things, follow up with people, and be so personable?
Boy, I don't know. Yes, most of the time I do remember names, and I don't quite know how that works, but it does seem to happen. I try to go out of my way to maintain relationships because I think that's important. And when I see people I know, I try to make a point of saying hello to them and having at least a brief conversation with them. And I try to make a point of touching base with people I haven't talked to in a while. And I think that's really important. I don't know what I'd say beyond that.
It comes natural for you when you touch base with someone that you haven't talked to in a while. Do you send an email? Do you text? You call them?
I really try to go with whatever their preferred mode of communication is. You know, if it were up to me, I'd talk to them every time. But sometimes it's just a text. Sometimes it's an email, and sometimes that'll lead then to a conversation or whatever. And, a lot of times you just happen to see somebody, on the street. If you can say hello,
Yeah.
maybe they don't see you, but you walk over, you find them and say
What's your
hello.
preferred mode of communication?
I suppose verbal communication as opposed to, I mean,
Okay.
I love to write, but I suppose when I'm communicating with someone, I'd rather be in person, face to face, having a conversation.
Yeah. Ralph, knowing what you know now, would you have done something differently?
In my career, generally, is it,
Let's just say in your career and life.
I think, yeah, first of all, probably I would have taken a different path in school and had a different degree and maybe a different path from that. I think I would have had more mentors. This may be true for you, but I grew up in an age and my parents were great parents, but that involved in advising me on anything like career or anything like that. And I think I would have, if somebody had given me that advice, I would have sought out more mentors and I probably would have chosen a different path in terms of my professional education
You didn't
I
like
don't
law
have any
school?
regrets. I've done a lot of great things. I've had a lot of fun. Right now, the work I'm doing in terms of board work is my favorite thing. I love it. But I might have chosen a different professional career path back then. And I
So
definitely
it's
would have sought mentors to advise me.
so law school, you didn't enjoy that as much? Is that Is that what you were referring to?
Matter of fact, I bet, I thought it was a good degree for pursuing different kinds of work. And it's turned out to be true for me. I've done a lot of different things without practicing law. But I think if I'd had to do over again, I would have pursued a different path on that front. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great for you because getting a JD from UT and getting through that, it's a huge accomplishment. I've hired great executives, and having a law degree, it's a nice to have. Regardless
Yeah.
of the in merchandising, in
Yeah.
marketing, in HR, because nowadays it just makes you that much that much more valuable because you can, read some of the contracts, you can, act in a way that the law degree teaches you in any area.
And I will say, Andres, you know this better than anybody, but it's so true. People change careers all the time. So you choose a path doesn't seem to be taking you where you want to go, choose a new path. And we all have that responsibility to engage in continuous learning to find out where we find our purpose and to pursue that. And so, I say to you, I might have chosen a different degree path, but where I'm at right now in terms of the kinds of work I'm doing makes me very happy. I love board
Yeah.
work.